Thank you so much. Thank you, Krishna and Melanie, for inviting me here. It's truly a pleasure for me to be here. As you heard in the introduction, I was a student at the University of the Free State many years. I think it's going to be 10 years next year. And so for me to be standing here talking to you guys is really an honor. I was also, I think, in the council when Professor Janssen introduced UFS 101, or I was maybe in the residence committee, I don't remember. But when he introduced it, I wished I could have been a part of it, because when we were first years, we didn't have a program like UFS 101. And so for me to be part of UFS 101 is really an honor and a privilege. So today, I'm going to take you through my own journey of developing into a leader. And I'm aware that you guys have gone through your own theory where you learned about the 4 stages of developing into a leader, which are awareness, exploration, leader identification, and leadership differentiation. So today I'm going to talk about how my journey of developing into the person that I am today looked like. And I hope that you can learn from it and maybe, start charting a path for yourself of how you're going to develop in the next few years of your life. So to start us off, I'm going to talk about my awareness journey. And this journey started with my mother, who was my role model growing up. So I was born when my mother was 21 years old, and then my sister was born a few years later. And when my mom was 25, my father passed away. And so at 25 years old, my mother found herself as a single mother of 2 kids. And at the time, she hadn't graduated from university yet. She had just gotten her, high school qualification. So she was advised to go back to university, which she did, and she later qualified with a law degree. And for me, looking at my mother going through that journey of qualifying as a lawyer, we used to visit her. My sister and I used to visit her in university, and most of the time would spend time with her over weekends as well. And this became one of the things that defined me as an adult. I really learned a lot from how my mother went through her own journey as a lawyer. So, and I wanted to share a story with my mother that defines the kind of parent that she was. I had just joined a new school. I think I was about 7 years old. I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade. And I was struggling academically at the school. So I came to my mother about 3 terms later, and I was top 3 in my class. I was 3rd position. And I came to my mother very excited. I'm going to tell her that, Mom, guess what? I am the 3rd position in my class. And I was expecting her to pick me up and throw me in the air and, be excited with me. And my mother looked at me and said, so who's position 1 and 2? I thought it was a very weird question, but I told her who the 2 girls were who were position 1 and 2. And she said, so what do they have that you don't have? And as a child, I thought about it, and I couldn't think of anything that they had that I didn't have. And I looked at my mother, wanting to respond to her and tell her that I didn't think of anything that they had that I didn't have. But the way she was looking at me told me that she already knew the answer, that she wasn't really asking me a question, but that she was trying to drive a point home. And the point that she was trying to make was, there's absolutely no reason why you are not position 1. And that lesson has stayed with me throughout my life. And my mother was really the kind of person that would pose these questions to you as a way of parenting. She would challenge you and encourage you to be more than you yourself thought you could be. She encouraged me to do extramural activities, so I did debate, netball, and those kind of things. And so another thing that made my mother a role model and why I view her as a leader was because she also took care of other people, even though she was, when I remember her, she was between the ages of 25 and 32, but we all the time had people living with us at our home. And my mother taught us that you don't just look after your own family, you should also think about how you can help other people as well. And so I consider this to be a leadership trait that my mother had. When I was 11 years old, the unthinkable happened, and my mother passed away. She was only 32 years old. And this really broke me because I had lost my father when I was 4 years old. So this broke me, and it really shattered my sense of identity. And ever since my mom died, from then into my teenagehood, I struggled a lot with my self-esteem. I struggled a lot with fear and doubt. And I started wanting to literally hide from the world. So why am I telling you about my mother today? It's because my mother's presence in my life really helped shape my childhood. Both, not only her presence, but also her absence. And I think when I look back at the time when I was growing up as a child, I couldn't have said I would have been a leader. So I don't really believe that I was born a leader or that I could have predicted that I would grow up into a person who considers herself a leader. And I think that sometimes when we look at people that we look up to, when we look at our role models, and maybe when you heard my profile being read today, you might think that, I'm sure she was born as a leader. I'm sure she knew from when she was growing up that she would become a leader. But that is not so. And as I said, I don't believe that anyone is born a leader, but I think that we all have our own unique experiences and our own unique circumstances, and that these experiences and circumstances we can use to help shape the kind of leaders that we want to be. So I believe that my mother shaped my childhood in the following 3 ways that shaped who I am today. The first one is that she taught me to believe in myself, and I learned in how she believed in herself and her own abilities. She taught me to believe in other people and to take other people with me. And lastly, she taught me that you have to finish what you started. When she went back to school at the age of 25 or 26, she was basically finishing what she had started, her educational journey, and she was developing herself into a full, grown-up and human being. So she taught me that you have to finish what you started, and you have to do everything with excellence. The next stage of my leadership journey, my exploration journey, involved me overcoming the fears and doubts that I had developed in my childhood. And this happened when I got to this very university. I started getting involved in certain groups and organizations that helped me discover my gifts, helped me discover my talents, and helped me to grow as a leader. However, when I got to the university, I didn't have that confidence. I remember an instance where they had called us to go and audition, I say audition for lack of a better word, for the debate team of the university. So I was very excited, and I went to one of the halls, I forgot where it was, or what it's called now, and I stood at the door. When I got to the door, there were 2 people on stage. The session had started, and so they were demonstrating what kind of debate they do. And so they were standing on stage and they were debating each other fiercely, rebutting each other's points, confidently talking, And I remember standing there thinking, I cannot be that person. I do not see myself standing on stage and taking, someone attacking my points like that. So I just backtracked and I never went back because I doubted myself. And I think every time I look back at that moment, I feel like it was such a missed opportunity for me to overcome the doubts and the fears that I walked into this university with. And maybe if I went back, I would do things differently. But what I like about my journey is that it didn't end there. After that, I had other opportunities that I made use of that have helped me become the person that I am today. So before I went to work, I'm going to talk about when I went to work now, but I started being involved in sports. I played netball in my residence, I played soccer, and I was involved in the residence committee. So little by little, I started challenging these doubts and fears. But when I graduated at the university, I still hadn't really overcome a lot of them. So I would still just take my small role in a group, do what I had to do, but I didn't really exert myself beyond that. So when I started working, I joined an organization called ABASA, the first icon over there. It's the Association for the Advancement of Black Accountants in Southern Africa. Why I joined ABASA was because the vision of ABASA resonated with my values and with the person that I am. And the vision is to increase African chartered accountants in South Africa because there's a shortage of African chartered accountants. So ABASA carries out activities that develop black accountants so that we can have more black accountants in the country. When I started off as a normal member, And we had to volunteer in high school in the townships to teach matric students accounting and maths, because we realized that if they don't pass accounting and maths, they can't apply for accounting at the university. This role was really not glamorous. It involved having to wake up every single Saturday morning to go and tutor for about 3 to 5 hours. And sometimes, we would go out on a Friday night, and then the following Saturday, you have to wake up, whether you like it or not. And this taught me so much about leadership, that leadership is about being consistent in what you do. And it's also about being hands-on. So sometimes when we think about leaders, we look at the people who are standing in front and maybe directing everyone and telling them what to do. But we don't realize that even the people that are getting things done on the ground, those people are also leaders. That's a type of a leadership role. So secondly, I discovered myself as a leader when I was working at PwC doing my articles. And so when you get to do your articles, you are given a coach and a mentor. And then when you get to a senior position at a later stage, then you also have to coach and mentor other people. And that experience changed my life, because for once I realized that developing into a wholesome person and developing into a leader was not just about me. It wasn't about me excelling academically. It wasn't about me excelling in my work. But it was also about how I'm imparting my own skills to the other people that are coming after me, and how I share my experiences with other people. And this is one of the reasons why I'm here today, because at one point I was also a first-year student, struggling, as I said, with fears, with self-doubts, feeling like maybe I don't belong here. But if I can come and talk about my experience, then maybe someone in here can hear it and then use that, to develop themselves. So leadership is really about taking other people with you, imparting what you have to other people. Then another organization that I became a part of, and this was more in my later professional life, well, not later, but when I moved back to Lesotho, I joined Global Shapers. Global Shapers is an organization of young leaders who are aged between the ages of 18 and 30. And by young leaders, I just mean people that are making a difference in their communities. So when I joined the Maseru hub of Global Shapers, it was really inactive. The hub had been launched by somebody, but they never really got it off the ground. So our job, when we got together with a group of young people, was to ask ourselves, how do we start getting this hub working and making a difference in the community, which is what it was supposed to do. So we got together, and that's all we really did. We recruited more members, and we started getting activities going. A defining leadership lesson for me when I was part of Global Shapers was when I went to Geneva to represent Lesotho, where different chairpersons of the hubs met. I was a chairperson of Global Shapers. When I got there, and we sat and we were discussing the issues that we were basically going to tackle in the next 12 months. I realized that if I hadn't been there representing a country as small as Lesotho, then no one would have put the issues that are important to the Basotho hub or the Basotho people to the fore. So there I learned a leadership principle of representation. I learned that when I'm a leader, when I stand here, I represent a lot of people. I represent people that are like me, that come from the background that I come from, that maybe lost their parents when they were young, people that may not get this platform, right? And I need to make sure that wherever I go, wherever I have an opportunity to represent people, that I need to make sure that their voices are heard, that I need to make sure that their issues are represented. Something that I applied when I was part of the council of the University of the Free State. When I was there, I was aware that I'm representing, a certain group of people. I'm representing women. I'm representing young professionals. I'm representing African people. So every time, as a leader, every time you're given a platform, you need to remember who you're representing in that platform. That it's not just about you and your interests and what you want to achieve, but that it's about the other people that you're representing. In identifying leaders, I've identified a number of role models. And I do have a lot of role models, I must admit, for different kinds of things in my life. But today I want to talk about two particular role models that I look to as leaders. And the first one is Professor Wiseman Nkuhlu. Professor Wiseman was the first African chartered accountant in South Africa. And I came Professor Wiseman when I was doing my third year, or my honors, CTA. I don't know if some people are doing accounting here, but remember me when you do CTA. But CTA was very tough, and I really felt like I will never overcome the challenges that I'm facing. I will never become a chartered accountant. And when I heard Professor Wiseman talk about the challenges that he had to overcome to become the first Black South African to be a chartered accountant, that opened my eyes to the fact that the challenges that I was facing could not even compare to the ones that he faced. And I stopped being sorry for myself, and I just got to work. There are three things that I learned from Professor Wiseman's career and journey are the following. The first one is that Professor Wiseman has consistently used his skills, talents, and resources to serve his community. So at that stage, when all of us thought about being chartered accountants, all we wanted to do was climb the corporate ladder, be a CEO, and make lots and lots of money. But listening to Professor Wiseman talk about his career and all the things that he had done with his career, he had become a lecturer, he had later become a vice chancellor, he had later served as a chair of the Higher Education Council. And that, for me, showed me that being a chartered accountant didn't necessarily mean I should just work with money and make lots of money. It meant I could use my skills and resources to serve my community. Secondly, he was involved in nation building. He became a chartered accountant just before South Africa achieved democracy. And throughout his career, he has served in various positions and leadership positions that were basically set in order to build the nation of South Africa, build a post-apartheid democracy. And for Professor Wiseman to avail himself for these positions challenged me as a young person then. And I said to myself, when I become a professional, I also want to see how I can be involved in nation building. Then lastly is he looked beyond his own profession and took on leadership roles. As I've mentioned in my last 2 points, is he didn't just confine himself to being a chartered accountant. So it doesn't matter what you came here to study, but your leadership responsibility lies beyond your profession or lies beyond your vocation and goes to other areas of the nation or other issues that we are facing today. Then my next role model is Professor Thuli Madonsela. A lot of us may know her, as the former public protector of South Africa. And her leadership is what I admire her leadership a lot, especially when she served as the public protector. So 3 things that make me look up to her as a leader is the first one is what she calls whispering truth to power. So when Professor Madonsela talks about her role as a public protector, he says that it was really being a Makatsi. Those people who speak Venda know what a Makatsi is. But a Makatsi is a leader in the community who is responsible to whisper truth to a chief, to remind them, this is where you're going wrong. This is, what you should be doing right. And she saw her role as really that of whispering truth to the politicians. And she was very fearless in doing that. And what I take from her every day is being fearless in speaking the truth, not being afraid to be criticized because you stand for the truth. And then the second one is she maintained integrity. There was a time when, in her role as a public protector, that people were really set on breaking down her character and bringing her out as this, bad person who was out to get whatever political leader she was after. But she maintained integrity. And over the long run, her integrity sustained her. We have not heard anything bad come out, about her. And I think as a leader, that is so important that you have integrity, because what you really have is your character, and that your character speaks for you. Then lastly, is she has served beyond the public protector role. So ever since she vacated her public protector office, Prof. Tuli has started the Tuma Foundation, which is aimed at empowering people for ethical leadership, development, and peace. And so just like Professor Wiseman, she asked herself, what are the skills that I have? How can I contribute to this nation? And she did so by starting this foundation. And this means that she didn't confine herself as a leader to the position of a public protector. Even outside of that position, she has continued to lead. These two people and many others that I look up to play an important role in giving me a vision of what I want to, the kind of leader that I want to be. And I think if we can all have role models that we aspire to be like, who inspire the kind of leadership that we want to emulate, then it's something that can help us in our development as leaders. Then the last stage of leadership differentiation. So obviously, as I have developed as a leader, I've had to define for myself what leadership means. And there are 3 things today that I want to share, which are my leadership principles that I've gained in all the experience that I've spoken to you before now, and that basically form the basis of what my foundation of my leadership journey. And in order to broaden my view of leadership and to come to these definitions, I had to immerse myself in learning about leadership. And I did this learning by reading, by interacting with other leaders and seeing how they lead, and by learning through formal leadership programs. In going through this process, I came to define the 3 leadership principles that I consider to be my view of what leadership means to me. The first one is the idea that leadership doesn't have to have a title. You can be a leader without a title. Robin Sharma, who wrote the book Leadership Without a Title, or A Leader Without a Title, says that leadership is less about the position you hold than the influence you have. It is about doing world-class work, playing at your peak, and leaving people better than you found them. So I got introduced to this concept of having an impact as a leader when I applied for a certain company that I will not mention because they didn't hire me. But they basically, when you fill in their CV, they say that underneath each role, if you say I was the director of this and this organization, you don't write what you were responsible for doing. You have to write down the impact that you had in that role. So what did you change? How did your presence have an impact or a positive impact on that organization? I found this very puzzling, but also very inspiring, because it took my focus from the role, from being obsessed with being a CEO or a CFO or a leader or a chairperson of something, to asking myself, what impact can I have in an organization? And to have an impact, you don't have to be given a position. All you can do is get up and do the work and have that impact. So as I reflect on my leadership journey, I realized that some of the impact, where I had the most impact, was when I wasn't given a title, when I was just moved by passion, or when I was just moved by the need that I saw that made me do the things that I did. Then my second leadership principle is one that I developed after being part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship. So the Mandela Washington Fellowship is a fellowship that takes 1,000 Africans. The number can vary, but it takes Africans from all over the continent into a 6-week fellowship in the United States. And this fellowship was unique in that they look at people who are not only accomplished in their field, but who are also making a positive contribution to society. So being part of this experience was truly humbling to me. For the first time, I met other young people that were from different parts of the continent that were making an impact where they lived. And this experience taught me that to be a leader, all you have to do is do your part. So sometimes when we think about issues like poverty or education, #fees must fall, we think that we want to be that leader who changes everything, who comes and solves that big, big problem. But when I was at this fellowship, I realized that all I had to do was solve a small part of the problem, and that other leaders, regardless of where they were, could solve the other parts of the problem. So this taught me that leadership is about working together, and it is about collaboration in collaboration as a collective, and not just about what I can do as an individual. Then the last leadership principle that I'd like to talk about is one that I briefly mentioned earlier, that leadership is a lifelong process. So I learned this principle in the past 2 years while I was studying for an MBA at the African Leadership University. The reason why I chose to go to that particular university is because their emphasis is not only on the doing business part or the business part of the MBA, but it is about being a leader, because they believe that Africa needs leadership in order to work. And so there are 3 principles that I learned, or 3 components of leadership that I learned, which is called the V3 model of leadership that they teach over there. And the first one is vision, that to be a leader, you must have a vision of where you want to go and what you want to achieve. And then the second one is value, which is what you do, the value that you bring, the impact that you bring that I spoke about. And then virtue is who you are. It's the ethical part of you, the integrity part of you, how you relate to other people, and how you bring other people with you. This program helped me to get rid of any fixed ideas that I had about African leadership. When a lot of us think about Africa and what Africa needs, we think we just need less corrupt leaders. But I realized that we need so much more than that. And I realized that I can never stop learning about leadership, that leadership is a lifelong process, not only learning about it theoretically, but that I myself can never stop developing into a leader. Right. So, in conclusion, I have taken you through my own leadership journey, and I've spoken about how I was shaped by my life experiences, my involvement in various organizations, my role models, and my own curiosity and pursuit of my leadership potential. My leadership development did not happen overnight, and I believe I can still not call myself a leader at this stage. It hasn't reached its end, but my journey is still a work in progress, even today as I stand on this stage. Furthermore, our journeys will all be different and unique as we go through our own stages of awareness, exploration, leader identification, and leadership differentiation. But what remains true for all of us is that leadership is more than just a theory, but a lived experience, and we can only truly find and define our own leadership identity if we take a leap of faith and break all the barriers and walls that stand between us and our ability to grow into the leaders that we have the potential of being. And that means we have to start today. In business school, I learned a principle. It was, what will you do differently on Monday? And that's what I want to leave with you guys today as you think about your own leadership journey. What is it that you're going to do from Monday in order to start this own journey, or to continue, if you've already started, your own journey of developing into a leader? So I'm going to leave you with an ungraded assignment that you can do for yourself on your own. The first one is that you should reflect on the parts of my story that resonated with you. Write down what your fears and doubts are about yourself. The fears and doubts that stand between you and your ability to become the leader that you want to be. Write down how you're going to face those fears. Make a plan of what you will do differently on Monday. Thank you very much.
Students, you now have the opportunity to ask Likeleli any questions, if there might be any. We have roaming mics on the floor. Any questions?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, darling.
Hello. Hi, darling.
I heard you say that you were not sure if you were a leader when you were in varsity. That debate thingy, yeah, the saga. So, what I want to say is, I think it's my opinion. Now, I believe that I was born a leader because I want to be president when I grow up.
Oh, wow.
So, thank you. Yeah, so what I wanted to say is that when I was growing up, I always saw myself as someone who would lead. Even like in class, maybe in grade 7, when we were given an activity or a project, I would be the one volunteering, to do maybe the drawings and what, and assigning activities for everyone in the group. And also like, maybe when I'm walking around or when someone wanted to get into a taxi and their money is short, if I have maybe 50 cent nyana, I give that person.
Yes.
So like,
well done.
So like, what I'm saying is that I think, in my opinion, we're different. I think I was born a leader. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that's definitely a fair point, and I mean, I will not argue with that because I'm not here to say I'm an absolute authority on leadership, right? And I was the same as you. When I was in school, I was RCL, in grade 7, grade 8, 9, and I was a deputy head girl in my residence, or at school and a head girl in my residence. So, but I still wouldn't say that I was born a leader. And the reason for that is because I stood here in front of you and said, I believe leadership is a process, right? I believe that even when people recognize you as a leader, if you yourself haven't internalized your own leadership identity, then you cannot call yourself a leader. I believe that leadership is more of an internal thing than an external validation, because the opposite is also true. Even when people don't recognize you as a leader, but you yourself consider yourself a leader, then you are a leader, right? So, and that's like the basis of my argument. But very, very fair point. Thank you so much.
Other questions?
Hello, Likeleli. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. I really appreciate it. My question was in relation to these associations or schools that you went to for leadership. How did you find out about them or gain exposure to these? And how would I go about doing that?
Okay. So, all right. I don't know, the second part of your question I kind of don't understand, but the first part is when I found out about the African Leadership University when I was in this university actually, and I was doing sort of just reading up on leadership. They started first as African Leadership Academy, and then later they started the university. So I think I would say at the time I was already kind of interested in leadership because I was reading about leadership. I was reading about what leadership development looks like in South Africa, what leadership organizations are there. So, and I think you can do the same. In as far as associations, I know that the university has a lot of associations that you can be a part of, and you'll find that as you engage with other people, as you interact with other people, that's when you start learning about all the other things that are out there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, and then I had another question, if I may.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any habits, like daily habits, that you would recommend for somebody who's looking at being a leader? Because I agree with you that a leader is not just somebody who's up at the top, but it's
Yes.
somebody who gives of themselves. So I was just wondering if there are daily habits that you would recommend for somebody who's looking at doing that as well.
Yes. So one big habit is that of reflection, of being able to sit down and reflect on yourself, reflect on how you interacted with other people, reflect on basically practicing self-awareness, not just going about your day and then sleeping and waking up and going about it again. So either at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, sitting and saying, how did my actions impact my environment? That's when you start kind of developing yourself intentionally into a leader. Because if you realize that my actions fell short of my expectations of myself as a leader, then you ask yourself, okay, what am I going to do better tomorrow? And then the following day you analyze that. So I'd say one big one is that of reflection. And then maybe the second one is being consistent. So showing up at things, not just doing things, half-heartedly, but consistently showing up, even when you're in doubt, even when you're not sure if this is really what you want to do, but being very consistent in your pursuit of leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
I just want to ask, as a person who doubts himself more, because I doubt myself a little more than usual. So how do you break down those doubts or weaknesses and turn them into your strengths and opportunities?
Okay. I think the first thing that I could say is, I think doubt may be something that we all have. You'll be very surprised at how much other people doubt themselves, actually. And even me coming here today, like, I had so many doubts. Will I really deliver? Am I going to be boring? Or, whatever. I had all these doubts, right? The first one is that you need to start. Like, starting is like giving your doubts the middle finger, if I can say that. If you do that thing that you're afraid of, is really saying, doubt, I can do it. And then the second one is talking back to yourself. The conversations, the internal silent conversations that you have with yourself are very important, because doubt is sort of like the conversations that yourself is having, you're having with yourself. So you need to speak back to that doubt and say, actually, I'm really good at this. Or sometimes you're not really good at that, so you need to go get good at that. So if you want to be a great speaker or you want to be a great writer, sometimes it really means just going and perfecting that skill so that you can have more confidence in executing it. And also surrounding yourself with people that affirm you. That's very, very important.
Thank you very much. We have another question on that side of the Kali, and then the last question on this side. 2 final questions. Thank you. You may ask.
Hello, sanibonani nonke.
Hi.
Awe. Well, for the past few minutes, I've been trying to figure out a way how to phrase this question. I just hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So I'm a leader in the sphere I'm in. So I just want
You're a leader
to...
where? Sorry.
Sorry?
I didn't get what you said.
I'm a leader in the political sphere.
Okay.
Yeah. So now my question is, as a young growing leader, what would you say I should possess that South Africa needs? Especially now looking at the elections that are coming, please try to look at what our political parties are offering us. Is it what we deserve as a country? What do you believe the country deserves from its leaders?
Yay. Such a heavy, heavy question. But thank you for asking it. So I have this thing. You know how we admire Abo Nelson Mandela and them, right? I always ask myself, how do we get to understand the challenges of our generation? I believe that people like Nelson Mandela understood the challenges of their generation. And maybe it was easier to understand because it was like such a big challenge that everyone was facing. I think what South Africa needs right now are leaders that really understand what the issues are, that understand what the issues of, people in the townships are, that understand the issues of young professionals, that understand the issues of every single person in this country, and people that go at that level to go and solve those problems. Yeah, I think we don't need leaders that are out of touch with what the issues are. So you need to be in touch by starting with your fellow students over here, understanding exactly what they struggle with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take the last question on this side.
Hello, Likeleli.
Hi.
As a youth now, in the day where we have the 5th industrial revolution
Yes.
Of technology, and we're living in Africa where financial security is much of a problem. And you, as a chartered accountant, you would agree that being financially secure, which is having less expenses than your income, is important.
Yes.
So here as students, I'd say maybe one thing that's down pressing us to actually find our truest potential is the lack of money. Because there's this saying, if you have money in your pocket, then you talk better. So how would you advise us, like how could we find a way as students maybe to find a better way to have that bit of capital to actually start exploring our future, like have more confidence? How?
Okay. Thank you so much for that question. So you asking the right person that question because I'm passionate about financial inclusion, and I've done a lot of initiatives around financial literacy. So the question that you're asking is how young people can empower themselves, right, so that they can earn money. How you empower yourself, I believe, is through education. And I know that not everyone believes that, right? But I believe that if you can skill yourself, then you can sell your skills or transform your skills into something that can make money for you. And that's how I live. So I have not been formally employed for a while. I worked in Ireland last year just for a year, but ever since 2015, I moved back to Lesotho, and I've literally been selling my skills. Every day, I sell my skills. And I don't believe that I believe that if I hadn't been a CA, I would still have, found a way because I'm just that kind of person. But I think it would have been more difficult. But when I walk into any office in Lesotho and I say, my name is Likeleli, I'm a CASA, they listen. They say, okay, what can we do for you? How much money can we pay you? So I think you need to skill yourself as a young person. You need to find a skill that you can transform into money. Thank you.
Mademoiselle, thank you
Hi.
for being here.
Thank you.
I got two questions for you. For one, something I noticed about women leaders and the way they espouse it, right? And it kind of relates to that quote from Robin Sharma about their lack of interest in not being inflated by the position that you hold, but rather the kind of impact that you impart, right? Would you say that maybe that's how women differ as leaders from men? Because I think I think in that particular department, in the way that they enact, right, leadership and how much they allow it to get up here, I think they differ. I need to confirm that. The second part of this question has to do with, the gender equity zeitgeist, right? Mm-hmm. That has taken up many social and political forums up by storm. What do you make of it, right? This kind of a fixation on first black this, first black, first female this. Do you think I find it might be insidious in the sense that, for instance, when you showed us the first black chartered accountant, I've always known it to be a woman from somewhere in Tata, for instance, right? And I feel like this first thing, far from creating aspirations and benchmarks, I feel that it might create kind of strife in the community itself and its ability to attain or kind of aspirations to attain these positions. So I hope you got that.
I got it.
Thank
you
you
so much. Those are two...
Students, let's settle down.
Thank you so much. Those are two really, really amazing and great questions and very important questions. So the first one about women leadership, I think first of all, Robin Sharma is a man, and he wrote that book, A Leader Without a Title. I think that women leaders are different. That's what I believe. I believe that women lead from a different place, and we might be the ones that are more willing to accept that, to be a leader, you don't have to have a title, right? But I don't want that principle to be something that encourages women to run away from positions. So to talk about Abasa, for example, me being the first woman chairperson, I wasn't the first woman to be qualified to be a chairperson of the Abasa branch. But I realized how a lot of women before me were just running away from that role. And it's because it wasn't an easy role. It wasn't even an easy role when I became a chairperson. And it wasn't easy, particularly for women. So I I say that leadership is not a title, not to discourage women from seeking titles or from taking on certain leadership roles. So there's different leadership structures depending on where you are functioning. Even within for example, the student community, the highest leadership, offices are the SRC, right? So as a woman, don't sit there and say, well, I don't really need to be the SRC president to be a leader. I can just lead where I am. That's not an excuse. It's more an empowerment rather than an excuse. It's more an empowerment to say you don't have to start there. You can start here and then work your way up. But I do think don't be shy to take on roles. But I don't think the idea of leading without a title is particularly a woman's idea. All right. I think it applies to men as well. Yeah. All right, then the second one about first. So to sort of say, if I understand your question, you're saying, we always talk about the first person to do this or the first black person. We talk about the first person on the moon, talk about the first black person to do this in South Africa. I don't think that creates strife. And I think, when I think about the context within which we say it, I talked about the issue of representation. So when you say, for example, when I served on the Council of the University of the Free State, I was the youngest person to serve. I was I'm still a very young professional. So at the time, I was even younger than this. When I served on the council, it meant I was able to bring the issues of young people into the council. When I was a student at the University of the Free State, the council was something that was so far away. Like when we thought the council, we thought about men with gray beards, right? But for the first time, there was a young person who could talk about fees must fall, for example, in a way that the older gray bearded guys couldn't understand. And that is important. So when we talk about first, for me, I talk about it in that context. It is an indication of representation. It's to say, for the first time, this particular group was represented in a certain context. All right.
Thank you very much, Likeleli. We can take one more question on this side.
Hi.
Hello.
As a young person who just came from a small place into this big university, I understand because sometimes when you come here, you can really feel small because this place is big and is really diverse. And especially as a woman, you feel that you only have a small part that you can really take because you look at our big guys and they can really just put you down and you feel so small. But you say that you had mentors to help you. Would you say that as a person who you seem to be very busy, would you say that you're willing to give your time to take mentees here?
Okay, thank you for that question. So let me talk about the being small first, okay? And I'm going to be very, very short. I had an experience where we had entered a competition called the SAICA Student Leadership Summit. 2 of us from this university made it to the top 25 of the competition. We went to Joburg, and when we got there, we were interacting with all these students from UCT, WITS, and we were really feeling small because we were from the Free State. It's a smaller university. People didn't know much about the university. And I won that competition. And I remember that was a lesson to me. I said to myself, I will never feel small about myself again. So sometimes that feeling small is not so much about the place, but much about how you view yourself. Because someone can walk into this big university and walk like they own the place when they really don't. And they're equally as small as you. So I think I want whoever feels small to start challenging themselves to realize that it's not about how big the place is, but it's a picture of what you think of yourself. Then about mentorship, right? So I definitely could not possibly even promise to mentor, people in this room, but there are associations I know on campus. There are people on campus. Some of my mentors I got from the residence committee. When I started really interacting with people, then they either mentored me or they showed me to someone who could mentor me. So when you're first-year students, start identifying like a second-year or a third-year student that could be your mentor, or a lecturer. Some lecturers really make time for students. And sometimes a mentor doesn't mean someone with direct access to you. So for example, I use my Facebook as a platform to mentor. That's all I post. I never post about like any other irrelevant stuff. I just post to share information. So some people, write to me and say, oh my gosh, your Facebook posts have helped me so much. So mentors can take any shape or form, but I think it's, our responsibility to say, what kind of mentor do I think I need, and to identify someone who can either mentor you or who can help you get those mentors.
Hello.
Hi. Please stand up. Yes.
I just wanted to know, are you satisfied about the success that you have achieved so far?
Am I?
Satisfied.
About?
The success you've achieved so far.
Okay. I am happy with what I've achieved so far, but I have very great ambitions going forward.
So you believe you can do more?
I believe
you can do more.
I can do more, definitely.
What is more? I know.
So
what is more? What do you have planned for your future?
Okay, it's a very hard question to answer, especially since I just graduated last month, so I was like just kind of trying to sleep right now. But so thank you. But so right now, in the future, I want to build my company, as you inspire innovation, and I want to continue making a difference. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Why not?
Wow, guys, you just want to go home.
We're going to take one more question.
All right. Come on, guys. They said this was going to be the graveyard session. I was hoping we'll prove them wrong. But I don't know.
Likeleli, thank you very much. I think a lot of us are quite concerned about what we're seeing in South Africa right now, and we're a little bit distressed about what the future might hold. So I think my question for you is just, what's your vision for South Africa for by the time we reach about 30 or 40 years old?
Yeah.
Should we have children? And so what's your vision, and where do you see, like, what's the one message you would give to us in terms of everyone, like, this is what you need to go do to actually make sure we build the country?
All right. So this is a very nice one for me. So I live in Lesotho, right? I've been living there for the past 5 years or so now. And we have had about 3 elections in the past 5 years, right? So, and I've traveled to Rwanda, that's where I used to study, and they basically had a genocide in 1994 that they're still trying to recover from. And why am I saying these things? I'm trying to say, South Africans, you guys have it so much easier, right? And I think the only problem that we have in South Africa is that our leaders and people that are privileged, like myself, are very out of touch with the reality of South Africa. To think that, like, okay. Yeah, so to think that, like, only, it's been what, 20-something years? 25 years, after democracy, that we would be any place than where we are now would have been very unrealistic. So my advice to you as young people is to get in touch with the challenges of this nation, be involved, get your hands dirty. If your children have to complain about the things that you're complaining about today, then it's your fault. Thank you.
Okay.